Well, hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2018 Regional Rankings Reveal Show, or the regional show, I guess you could call it, for the ACHA here on the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. Yours truly, Captain Lou, here with you tonight on this Thursday, February the 20th, or 21st rather, as we are 1 month away from the start of the national tournament down in Dallas for the first two divisions, anyways. And it's going to be November or December. Why do I keep saying November? It is going to be March 26th, rather, when the big show gets underway in Division 3. But first, before that, the teams that are in the regionals have to go through regional play, and those are either going to be March 9th and 10th or March 8th and 9th, depending on which region you're in. Well, first of all, we've got, let's go over the Pacific region, as those regionals are first on our list. And the automatic berths, really no surprise for the top one, Andy McConnell's Kansas Jayhawks. The Jayhawk hockey got the #1 seed this year, and they will get the first golden ticket to Dallas, and on March 26th. The other golden ticket will be a repeat team to the Nationals. That's going to be Tim Hartje and his Air Force team. So congratulations to Kansas and Air Force. They have punched their ticket to the Nationals in Dallas. As we get underway with 3 versus 10, it's going to be Nebraska taking on Missouri State. Larry Taylor's Nebraska team looking to make a trip back to the Nationals, as they were well represented last year down in Columbus. Kind of a close race, I thought, maybe for them to maybe squeak into the automatic berth at #2, but unfortunately for them, they have to settle for #3, as they'll take on an upstart #10 Missouri State team. Coming in at #4 this year in the Pacific region is going to be Wisconsin-Milwaukee. They'll take on McKendree. It's going to be Paul Wegel's team going up against Brett Dienap's team in the first round of the regionals, as both of those teams look to get back to the national scene. 6 and 7 is going to be Arkansas against Wisconsin-Platteville. Arkansas, of course, made it last year. They were undefeated in pool play in the Nationals, but unfortunately for them, did not have enough points, as they tied twice and were edged out by eventual national champion Hope College, as they look to get back to Nationals and make even a bigger statement, that being Arkansas. Creighton and Colorado Mesa, they do battle in the other one in the 5 versus 8 matchup in the Pacific region. Those games, by the way, are going to be on March 8th and 9th at the Sioux Center in Sioux Center, Iowa. The All-Season Center, I guess you could call the rink. That's 770 7th Street Northeast in Sioux Center, Iowa. That's going to be March 8th and 9th, Friday and Saturday. So again, Nebraska against Missouri State, Wisconsin-Milwaukee versus McKendree, and then it's going to be Arkansas at #6 against Wisconsin-Platteville at 7, 5 versus 8, Creighton versus Colorado Mesa. Well, if you look at those weight rankings and look at some potential second-round matchups, you could potentially have 2 national tournament participants from last year in the second round of that Pacific region, with Nebraska and Arkansas locking horns for one of those golden tickets to Dallas. And the other one, if it goes to chalk, it's going to be Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and Creighton. I kind of like Colorado Mesa as my sleeper team, maybe out of that region. Timothy Weingard's team, I think they've got some unfinished business from last year as well. If there's any upsets, I could see Colorado taking care of Creighton, Colorado Mesa, that is. And again, you can even watch out for Wisconsin-Platteville. Kevin Wanasakis' team against Arkansas, 6-7 matchup. Those are always the tough ones, obviously, to pick because they're so close. And we've seen that over the years. But if there's a sleeper, I'm going to go with Colorado Mesa or possibly Wisconsin-Platteville. But I think Nebraska is going to come in with this tournament with a chip on their shoulder. They feel like they may have been slighted out of that automatic bid. So I think they've got a little extra incentive on their sides, in their mind anyways. So I could see Nebraska as one of my favorites to get the other golden ticket. And so that means they would take care of Arkansas. But Wisconsin, Milwaukee, going up against probably Colorado Mesa. Boy, that's going to be a tough one. I'm probably going to stick with chalk, though. Nebraska and Wisconsin, Milwaukee would be my picks maybe to come out of that Pacific region. So, again, the top two teams in the Pacific region, Kansas and Air Force. Andy McConnell's team undefeated, and I think they've had one overtime loss or tie. So they have not lost any games in regulation, and they will punch their ticket to Dallas along with Tim Harchey's team. That's Air Force. They got the 1 and 2 seeds respectively. So we'll see how they match up when they get down to Dallas coming up on March 26th. That's when all the fun begins, by the way, for the Division III. Really looking forward to being down there and being a part of all the action down there, bringing you the play-by-play and color commentating for that tournament again this year. Well, let's switch our gears real quick to the South region. And the top two seeds this year in the South are Florida Gulf Coast and South Florida. Both of those teams, no stranger to the national tournament, as both were in last year. Tom Philbin's team, another return trip. We talked to Tom on my show on 12 Ounce Sports Radio Tuesday night, Captain Lou's Pucks and Pigskins, and they know the task at hand. One of the things that I liked with talking to Tom the other night was that, they weren't shy about their goals. They've made it to the Final Four. They've made it to the championship game over the years in Division III, but they haven't been able to get that last step and get to the national championship, win the trophy. They've been to the finals a couple of times over the years. 2 years ago, they were in the Final Four, losing to national runner-up Calvin in a game that they were ahead. So they know what's at stake. They know what's at stake. Like I said, they were there last year. It's going to be a different venue. I know they're very motivated, and not that all the other teams aren't motivated, but they are playing with a little extra chip on their shoulder. The one thing that he did say, and it's a great point, and I've talked to some other coaches that have gotten automatic berths in some of the other divisions, is Florida Gulf Coast is going to go probably 5 or 6 weeks without playing a real game of hockey. Their advantage with Florida Gulf Coast is they may be able to scrimmage their D2 team that also has got an automatic berth down to Dallas with a rich tradition of hockey at Florida Gulf Coast over the years. So that's going to be something to watch out for down in Dallas, is teams like Florida Gulf Coast and Kansas and Air Force that have those automatic berths. It's going to be 6 weeks before they play a hockey game. And is there going to be any rust involved? That's one thing that I'm going to keep an eye on. But getting back to the regional matchups in the South region, that's going to be in a new spot this year, by the way. They're going to be in Huntsville, Alabama, and those are going to take place on March 9th and 10th, Saturday and Sunday. 3 versus 10 matchup. Tampa, they're no stranger to the national tournament. They've been there before. They're taking on a 10th seed in South Carolina. The 4 and 9 seeds this year, Kennesaw State taking on the Hurricanes of Miami. And then the 6 and 7 matchup is going to be Central Florida and Georgia Tech. That's one matchup that I would love to see in person down in Alabama. And finally, number 5, Ole Miss, with a nice record of 19-2-1-1, taking on Liberty, the 8th seed. So again, Florida Gulf Coast gets one of the top 2 seeds and gets one of the golden tickets to the Nationals out of the South region. And South Florida's and Mike Kenakari and his team, the Ice Bulls, are going back to Dallas. They kind of, with their performance in the Southern Collegiate Hockey Conference tournament, that kind of boosted them up to that number 2 seed. They were able to hang on in the last ranking. So congratulations to South Florida as they are on their way to the national tournament. Some of the interesting matchups in the South region in the first round, obviously it's Central Florida and Georgia Tech. Bob Cernich's team, they went to nationals last year. They had a taste of it. I know when talking to him earlier in the year, that's their goal, is to get back, as is everybody's goal in the nationals, or to get back, obviously. Everybody's in the ACHA is to get back to nationals. But I know, Bob, they had a taste of it. They felt they could have played better last year in Columbus, so they get their chance, but they're going to have to run through a couple of very solid teams to get to nationals. This South region is loaded as well. A couple of unknowns really in Mississippi and Liberty. Ole Miss 19-2, 1-1, as I mentioned, a great regular season. They finished runner-up in the Southeastern Conference hockey tournament to Georgia. And Liberty, of course, they made a trip a couple of years ago under Coach Rhett McGibbon, but now they've got a new regime with Caleb Fitzpatrick, and they finished with a good record. They're in the 8th spot. So that's kind of a matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing. I don't know, as I mentioned, a couple of unknowns. Kennesaw State and Miami. Well, I'll tell you about, that one again is Kennesaw State. I think you talk about teams with a chip on their shoulder. Last year, they've lost in a heartbreaker to Florida Atlantic in triple overtime. And they were the 3 seed last year, and Florida Atlantic, of course, in the 10 seed. So I know that they're obviously, that's got to be a motivating factor for them as they look to get back to nationals. And so that's going to be a very interesting matchup. I don't envy Miami in this one because I think Kennesaw is really going to be looking forward to this matchup and looking to move forward. So if the games go to chalk, the second round, you've got Tampa and Central Florida going against each other. I mean, almost like a crosstown matchup. I mean, not really crosstown, but these two teams know each other quite well. Steve Kashera's team looking obviously to get back. Michael Kroll's team, they've been there. They know what it's like to have the taste of nationals. They've made a couple of deep runs, has Central Florida in the past, once they've gotten to nationals. But don't count out Georgia Tech and Bob Cernich. I love their squad. They had a taste of it last year. Great goaltending for Georgia Tech. It's hard to beat tough goaltending, obviously, in the playoffs. So, and especially in the regionals. If I had a sleeper team, I don't know if I really have a sleeper team. South Carolina, they're kind of an unknown as well. Alan Soroy's team back in the regionals. They could be a sleeper. It's hard for me to go against Tampa. They've got a very solid program. That Central Florida Georgia Tech game is going to be a monster. That's all I can say. I love both teams in that one. It's going to come down to probably the team that makes the fewest mistakes. I know it's cliche-ish, but I don't know how else to maybe make a prediction on that one and who's going to come out on top on that one. We talk about this in the nationals and also now in regional play. Especially nationals, you might be able to get away with pool play with taking 10 minutes off. A lot of times you can't. And in this type of situation now, with it being one and done in the regionals, it's a single elimination, kind of a bracketed tournament. You take 10 minutes off and the game's over and your season's over. So I think it's going to come down to that. Fewest mistakes, penalties, you name it. That's in that game, that 6-7 matchup. It's that close. I really believe it is. So I'm going to go with Tampa. And in that second round game against Central Florida, Georgia Tech, gosh, it's going to be close. And if it goes to chalk, Kennesaw State and Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I'm not taking anything away from them. I just really haven't seen them play as much. They've got a great record, and they played Georgia tough. I think they could give Kennesaw State a big test, and it's going to come down to, again, the fewest mistakes in that game. But I just love Kennesaw State. I really think that they've got, that chip on their shoulder mentality is really going to come through for them. So toss up between Tampa and Central Florida. Boy, those are two huge games. Central Florida and Georgia Tech the first day, and then whoever wins that goes up against a Tampa team. I think these 3-6 matchups are huge in the first two regions that we've talked about. And I don't know, man, that's going to be one heck of a region down there as well. So, but I'm going to go with chalk in this one. I'm going to go with Tampa and Kennesaw State, and to punch the golden tickets in the South region. One thing I want to talk about before we go to the North and the Atlantic regions, Georgia had to decline an invitation this year to go to regionals. They would have finished probably right in the middle. They were ranked fourth going into the rankings this week. If you haven't had a chance to listen to the interview I did with one of the assistant coaches with Georgia, Ryan Bray, it was a great interview on my podcast Tuesday night, Captain Lou's Pucks and Pigskins on 12 Ounce Sports Radio, which is also, you can listen to a copy of, or a tape of the interview in its entirety on iTunes. Just search Captain Lou's Pucks and Pigskins, and you can hear the interview with Ryan Bray, assistant coach of Georgia. They had to decline academic reasons. They've got midterms that weekend that they're playing down in Dallas, and I commend them for making that decision because, in the end, all these kids are student athletes, first and foremost. And to make that decision had to have been very difficult. And you could tell with the tone in his voice how difficult it was to make that decision for that team. They voted on it, once they knew that there was a good possibility that they could make a run to nationals. So, my hat's off to them. I know it's difficult. It really is to turn down an opportunity like that. And they should be commended. And I'm going to bring this up down in Dallas when, during the broadcast, it's very tough to make a decision like that. They won the Southeastern Conference hockey tournament in Nashville. That was their nationals. They defeated an Ole Miss team that, could surprise me and go to nationals. And so I just want to say congratulations to Georgia on a great season. Hopefully we can see them back in the nationals again soon. They've got midterms coming up that week. And, like I said, Georgia's a tough school to get into. Academics come first. And so, you can't argue with that. And I just want to say, congratulations on a great season. I know it's difficult to make that decision. So again, my heart's out to you guys. But again, congratulations on a well-deserved, a great run. And I know you guys will be back. So, well, we're halfway through our little preview of the Division III regional rankings and the reveal as to who's going to play in the regionals and who gets to punch their golden tickets already to Dallas, March the 26th. The national tournament itself starts on March the 20th with the Division I games. That's a Thursday. My gosh, we're 4 weeks away already. It's going to be here before you know it. And then on March the 21st, the Division II teams square off and they do pool play. And then, of course, March 26th, it's going to be the Division III squads going at it in pool play. And then March 27th, the women in Division I and Division II get started with their national tournament as well. But tonight we're talking about the Division III rankings and who gets to go to Dallas and then who gets to go to the regionals coming up March 8th and 9th and 9th and 10th that weekend. So let's head to the Atlantic region and the two teams that get to punch their ticket to the nationals. No surprise here. I believe this is the fourth straight year that these two teams have been able to bypass the regional tournament and get to go down to Dallas. And that, of course, is Farmingdale at number 1. Joe Mazey's team, 22-1-1. Another great run for them in the Empire Conference. Congratulations to them as they're going to Dallas. And number 2 is Fairfield. Again, they were able to punch their ticket. And I know both teams know that they've got some unfinished business. I had a chance I've talked to Joe on a couple of occasions at nationals, and he's been very gracious, but you can tell the disappointment. And they're going to, a lot of these teams, I mention it all the time about the chip on your shoulder mentality. They've been there. They know what it's like. They want to get to that next step, which is through pool play to get to the Final Four. And then after that, it's anybody's game. But, the unfortunate thing with Farmingdale is they always end up getting in such a brutal pool that, again, one period where they just may not have everything going on all cylinders, and it's cost them. So we'll see this year if Farmingdale can make that next step and get to the Final Four. The regional matchups this year, the regionals for the Atlantic region are going to be March 9th and 10th, and they're going to be at Westchester, Pennsylvania at the Iceline Quad Rinks. And in the 3 versus 10 matchup, it's going to be Ramapo against Massachusetts Maritime. Congratulations to both teams. Josh Teft and his Massachusetts Maritime Academy team, their first playoff trip, first regional trip. So congratulations to them, as they are now going to be able to make the trip against a very, very tough Ramapo team at a 3 versus 10 matchup. Steve Hijek and his George Mason team, they're going to be going up against number 9, and that, of course, is Delaware, the Joey Garrett squad, back in regional play again this year. 5 versus 8 matchup. Congratulations to Rich Gulberti and his Rams of Fordham, as they have clinched a spot in the regionals. They'll take on Springfield in the 5 versus 8 matchup. I think this is Andrew Abraham and his squad. I think this is their first trip to the regionals in Division III, so congratulations to them. And then a big matchup, another tough one in 6 and 7. Rowan against Indiana U, Pennsylvania. Wow, that's Bruce Kaczynski's team, again with another tough matchup against Zachary Bardo and his Indiana U of Pennsylvania team. So again, it's Ramapo and Massachusetts Maritime, the 3 versus 10 matchup. It's going to be George Mason against Delaware at 4 and 9. And then it's going to be number 5 Fordham against number 8. That would be Springfield. And then the 6 and 7 matchup is going to be it's going to be Rowan against IU. These first round matchups, Ramapo against Maritime, Josh Teft's team, 19 and 2. This is where you get to see how the schedule works, what kind of play they played against some of the teams that they played. This Ramapo squad is very, very good. They overtook George Mason for the 3rd spot, they gained some momentum. George Mason with Steve Hijek, and they got to go to nationals last year. They had a taste of it. I've talked with some of their players, and they've got some unfinished business as well. They thought that they could have played better last year. Talking with Coach Steve Hijek on my show earlier in the year, he said last year they may have had the feeling where they were happy to be there. This year they're not just happy to be there. They want to finish the job and get to the championship game or the Final Four, as does everybody. But Delaware is always a tough out. They're conference rivals in the Delaware Valley Collegiate Hockey Conference, a great hockey conference, by the way. So that ought to be a great first round matchup. Fordham and Springfield. This is kind of an unknown matchup for Fordham, but I know that Fordham, they feel like they've got some unfinished business. They lost a very tough 1-goal game to Rowan last year, so they think that they have this is one. I've talked to Rich. They're focused. They're motivated. They want to take that next step. They really feel like they're national tournament material. So really interested to see how that matchup goes. So if the games go to chalk, you're looking at Ramapo against Rowan. Huge matchup there for one of those golden tickets. I love Rowan in this one. I really think this is going to be Rowan's year to go to nationals. I'm going to go with them in an upset over Ramapo if it's a 6 versus 3. Then it would be George Mason and Fordham if it goes to chalk. Man, another just stacked regional in that second day if it's 4 versus 5. That's, banning any upsets. If there's an upset, then all bets are off. But wow, those are 2 huge games. Those are national tournament caliber games right there, just by going by their pedigree and their recent history. If I was to pick an upset, I think it would have to be Delaware, maybe over George Mason. I just don't see it. I love how George Mason has played as of late, and I think they're going to play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, dropping down to a 4 seed. So I think the first round games are going to go chalk, and you've got Ramapo and Rowan. I like Rowan in that one. And then you got George Mason and Fordham. How do you pick a winner out of that one? George Mason's been to the Nationals. Fordham really wants it bad. Wow. Those are tough ones to pick. They really, truly are. So if I got to pick one, Rich, I love you, but I think George Mason is going to be my pick. I'm going chalk in this one. That limb that I'm walking on obviously isn't very big, so I'm going with George. Actually, I'm not going chalk. I take that back. I'm going to go with the 6 seed Rowan, and I'm going with George Mason, the 4 seed. So that would complete 3 of the 4 brackets right now. One more thing, I do want to bring up another team that was in the top 10. I think they were ranked 6th last week, and that's Quinnipiac. I had a chance to speak with their team president, Brandon Vatima, Tuesday night on my show. Again, another great interview. Just kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little bit, but they voted at the beginning of the year. It's just, he told me how tough it was for them to be able to get through to the Nationals last year. They made it through regionals. They were the Cinderella story in the regionals. I think they're ranked 9th or 10th in the regionals last year in the Atlantic, and they made it through. Then they made one heck of a run to get to the Final Four. They made it through a gauntlet, including Michigan State last year. Well, Brandon told me, how tough it was just to get there. They had to raise $18,000, he said, or something like that, just to get there. And it took them in a short period of time. And unfortunately, they were unable to accept an invitation to go. And, I have to congratulate them on a great season. Well, great kudos for them. Again, with academics and with a lot of these kids having to pay their own way, it's tough. And, how these kids juggle it with classes and practice times that a lot of times aren't your normal 3 o'clock in the afternoon ice time or whatever, 6 o'clock at night. A lot of these kids got to play at 9, 10 o'clock at night, practice that is, or 6 in the morning. And I know how I was as a college kid, 6 o'clock in the morning didn't come too easy to me way back in the day. So I think that it's, it takes a lot of dedication, and it's a very, very, it takes a good athlete and a very, very organized person to do that. But getting back to Quinnipiac, congratulations to them on a great season. And again, I encourage you to listen to my show. It's on iTunes, Captain Lou's Pucks and Pigskins, with my interview with Brandon Vatima, the team president of Quinnipiac. He explains it, why they couldn't do it. You could sense the disappointment in his voice. They really wanted to be there, but it's just, unfortunately for them, they couldn't do it. So can't let it go without congratulating them on a great season. Well, finally, we've got one region left, and that's the North region, the one closest to me. That's why I guess I kind of saved it for last, but definitely not least. The 2 teams that get the automatic buys or the golden ticket out of the North region. Number 1 seed is Sioux College. Mike Hall's team with a great record, 23-2-1, well-deserved number 1 ranking. Jason Bartek's team played fantastic all year. They've got the 2 seed, so they're both going to Dallas. Their tickets are punched, so they're going to be representing the North region very well. 3 versus 10. Hope College, the defending national champions, back, under fire again, as they've got to win 2 games to get back to the Nationals. They're going to take on Saginaw Valley in the first game, March 8th and 9th, Friday and Saturday, in East Lansing at the Summit, at Suburban Ice. There's a couple of rinks there, the site of the regionals 2 years ago. 4 versus 9, Charlie Link's team, Grand Valley, looking to get back to nationals. But first, they've got to host Adrian College. And the 5 versus 8, a monster first round game. Michigan State and Oakland. And then finally 6 and 7, Dan Cosgrove and Ferris at number 7 against Dan Menard's team and Indiana at number 6. So some huge first round matchups in the North region with, I mean, you got the defending champs, Hope. Last year they were a 3 seed, so maybe they believe in karma. They can do it once, they can do it again. Chris Van Timmeren's team is loaded. Such a stacked North region. And they're going to, Saginaw Valley is up and coming. They, are back in the regional tournament. Of course, they were a powerhouse about 9-10 years ago, winning back-to-back national championships, being in the national tournament so often. Now they're back after a hiatus. I'm sure they're going to give Hope a little bit of a run, but I can't see the Flying Dutchman losing this opening round game. You've got Grand Valley and Adrian. Adrian defeated Michigan last year in the first round game. I'm sorry. Now I'm drawing a blank on that one. I apologize. No, Michigan played Indiana in that first round game. I apologize. Grand Valley and Adrian, I think this is a rematch of last year's opening round game. That's what it was. And Adrian won that game. So Grand Valley with an opportunity to maybe exact some revenge as they look to get back to nationals. As I mentioned, 5 versus 8, Michigan State and Oakland. Don Headley's team, they were the automatic, one of the automatic berths last year. They had a rough go at it in the nationals. They're looking to get back. They're coming on strong now as of late. And then you've got Indiana and Ferris, 2 great games right there. All 4 great games. If it goes to chalk, it's going to be Indiana and Hope in the second round game, and then it'll be Grand Valley and Michigan State. Those 2 teams played one of the best regional games that I've seen, opening round games in the last few years. When they played overtime at Michigan State, I think it was 8-7 or 7-6 was the final score in that one. Grand Valley won that game. And then Adrian beat them, Grand Valley, in the finals 2 years ago. So these Grand Valley and Adrian obviously have some history in the regionals over the last few years. If I was to pick a dark horse team, I'd go with Ferris State. Dan Cosgrove's team is really playing well as of late. The advantage for some of these schools in the North region is all of them, I believe, except for Indiana, are going to be playing in the Michigan Collegiate Hockey Conference's Vesna Cup tournament. So they're going to get a couple extra games. That includes Michigan. So it's not like they're going to be rusty when they play on March 8th and 9th. So I'm going to go with a sleeper in this one. I'm going to go with Ferris defeating Indiana. So you're going to have Hope and Ferris in the second day for the right to go to nationals. And then Grand Valley and Michigan State, it looks like, with Don Headley and Charlie Link's teams going at it again. And that one's going to be a slugfest, an absolute slugfest. I look for Hope to come out of the region and go back to nationals this year. Grand Valley and Michigan State. Grand Valley's been so close over the years not to get in. Man, this is a toss-up. The one thing, again, I've mentioned it all show here tonight, is the teams with the chip on their shoulder that thought that they didn't do as well as they should have in the nationals last year. Michigan State is at the top of that list. And I can see Don Headley's team regrouping and getting back to nationals. So I'm going to go with Hope and Michigan State in the North region, getting there, punching their golden tickets to nationals. Well, that leaves us with picking a national champion. I did it on the reveal show 2 years ago when I picked Calvin, and they made it to the finals. Last year, I picked Oakland. They made it to the finals. Some of these teams probably don't want me to pick them because they might go to the finals, but they're going to lose. But this year, the whammy's going to be off. Although I hesitate to go against the Michigan schools because they've been so dominant in Division III. It's one of those things, it's like I always say about Ric Flair. To be the man, you got to beat the man. And my national champion, boy, I really like how Farmingdale State's playing. They've been so close. A Florida Gulf Coast team that's been red hot. They're playing well. Those teams looking to get past the Michigan connection. I hate to sound biased, but until somebody knocks off somebody from Michigan, the state of Michigan, how can you go against them? But I think somebody's going to do that this year. My pick to win it all this year in Division III is going to be Farmingdale State. Joe Mazey's team, I think, is going to find a way to get back or get to the Final Four and win it all. But I wouldn't be surprised if Hope College goes on a run. They've got the goaltending to repeat as national champions. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan does it, or I wouldn't be surprised if Florida Gulf Coast goes to the finals. So I'm going to stick with it, though. Joe Mazey, the whammy might be on you guys in Farmingdale State. That's my pick for the national championship. Well, hey, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. We're going to have more. I'm going to be doing some shows from Dallas. Join me every Tuesday night on Captain Lou's Pucks and Pigskins. I'm live on 12ouncesportsradio.com, 8 to 10 Eastern time. We have great guests. We go over the rankings. We go over some past scores. We had 5 guests last Tuesday night. We're going to have, with the tournament coming around and with the automatic qualifiers, we're going to be very guest loaded over the next few weeks. It's 4 weeks to nationals, everybody. It's here. The light is at the end of the tunnel. The road to Dallas, you can see the end. Frisco is on our minds. Looking forward to seeing all of you down there. Now that you know my face, some of you that may have not seen me but have listened over the years, I want to say thank you, number one, for listening. And come and say hi. I'd love to talk hockey with you. So again, thanks everybody for joining me tonight. It's been a great show. Hey, as a reminder, keep your heads up, keep the sticks down, keep them feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Miss you, Mom. Thanks for joining.